Judd Hendricks, and I want to welcome you to Interfaith Paths to Peace, the beloved community learning labs. Each month, we're taking a different theme related to how do we create a racial justice city. And this month, we've been looking at violence reduction. And so we have, I think, probably one of the most awesome panels ever assembled of wisdom holders and organizational stakeholders that are doing some amazing work in this area. So I want to welcome you to this series, and I'm glad you decided to join us. It really is going to take a community effort in order for us to address violence in our community. So thank you for being here and being interested in that. If we want those that are listening, if you're joining us on Zoom, there'll be a moment for you to unmute yourself and ask some questions as we get going. If you're joining us on Facebook, welcome. We want to invite you to also join in on the conversation, and you can do that by leaving a chat or a comment or a question in the chat book on Facebook, and we will bring your question or comment into our conversation. Thanks again for being here. As I said earlier, each week, the beloved community is taking a different topic or a different theme related to creating a racial justice city. And we've been looking at how do we reduce violence in our city. The first week we did some research or talked with folks that were doing research in this area. Last week, we looked at arts and media and their role in helping reduce violence. And then today we're having this panel of organizational stakeholders. I do want to invite you to, all of this kind of culminates in a crescendo event, which we're calling the Reckoning Forum, which will be held on Tuesday, March the 9th at 6 o'clock. We've invited 4 really amazing individuals to come and share their truth and also share the initiatives that they're working on to reduce violence in our community. So I hope you will come back and join us in that conversation. The purpose of that conversation is to surround them with all of the resources they need in order to live out their passion. And so we invite you to come to be inspired, but we also invite you to come ready to take action to support these. It's actually 4 Black young men that are doing a lot of amazing work in this space. Dr. Nifley, who's at Spalding, Richard Whitlock, Aubrey Williams, and Savi Shabazz. We will be highlighting the work they are doing. So I hope you'll come back and join us for that, and be ready to figure out how we can support them and take action. It's not just a chance for us to listen, it's a chance for us to be inspired to take action. So I hope you'll come back and join us for that event. I think it will be a powerful event. So today, back to our topic. We are looking at how to reduce violence, and we have some really amazing people in our community organizations that are already doing that work. And so we've invited them to come together and share a little about the wisdom about what's working, what they're doing, and also encourage them to have some cross-pollination to stay connected so we can collaborate across our city in efforts to reduce discrimination. Our panelists that are joining us, and I'm going to go through and name and thank them, and then we'll ask them to introduce themselves in just a moment. First, we want to welcome Jessie Holliday. She is the Community Engagement Advisor for Chief Amy Hess, and she works with the Group Violence Intervention Project Manager, and we'll hear more about that initiative in just a moment. Deborah Barnes Byers, who's with Pivot to Peace, which is a program of peace education. Kimberly Moore, who is a Joshua Community Connector. And Christy Welch with Christopher 2X's Game Changers. And Dr. Eddie Woods with No More Red Dots. Kathy Mikas, who is the State Director for Moms Demand Action. And Kim Tabler, who's with the Community Shield program. So as you can see, we have a really amazing panel for us today. So listen, if you have a question, you're welcome to put it in the chat box, and If later on in the program, you'll be invited to unmute yourself if you're on Zoom and ask some questions. So let's jump in. What I'd like for the panelists to do is first just to introduce themselves and share a little bit about the work that they're doing and some about the story that brought them into doing this work. So Jesse, can we start with you if you'd unmute yourself? Thanks for being on today.
Thanks, Judd. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me. So I'm the project manager for the Group Violence Intervention Initiative, and that is a collaboration between social services, community voices, and law enforcement. It's a strategy to reduce gun violence. It's very specific to incidents of gun violence and the very small population of our community that is driving that gun violence, which we've unfortunately seen just keep increasing in our community. And you know, I come to this work, first of all, as a native Detroiter who grew up in an inner city and a rough neighborhood, and you know, spent my life in social justice movements with my hippie parents, and came to Louisville about 18 years ago as this is where my mom grew up, actually, and came here to Louisville to work for the Courier-Journal. And I spent, you know, 10 years covering public safety in this community, sitting in living rooms with moms who'd lost their sons, and trying to tell the story of neighborhoods that were impacted by violence. You know, in 2012, I was at the shooting in Parkland when the second round of gunfire went off, and honestly, that sort of changed my direction a bit in terms of wanting to move away from just the reporting of incidents and start to work in the system a little more. So I eventually had the opportunity to join the county attorney's office, and subsequently went to the Justice Cabinet to work on reentry reform work, and then ended up at LMPD, where I worked for 3 years until I was asked to come over to the mayor's office and work on managing this initiative, as well as the Synergy Project, which is designed to increase conversation and build relationships between police and residents. So I took what I had learned in my life, and then as a reporter, and tried to go inside the system to try to see what change I could affect. And so now I'm really feel called to be working on this issue of violence, and I'm grateful to be here and see many of our partners that are digging into this issue as well. Thanks.
Jesse, thanks so much. And I've had the pleasure of working with you on a variety of initiatives, and you step into some really brave spaces. So I appreciate the way you navigate those and are a part of those. It's really a joy to have you today. Thank you for being here. And Deborah, would you mind introducing yourself? Thanks for being on the panel today.
Good afternoon, and thanks for inviting me. My name is Deborah Barnes, and I am the project manager for the Pivot to Peace program of Peace Education program. This hospital violence intervention program is funded by Louisville Metro Government Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhood, and it is an evidence-based program that is being facilitated nationwide. This HVIP model has been in existence since 1990, 30 years, and the model originated in Oakland, California, and a program with Youth Alive and in Milwaukee at the Children's Hospital of Wisconsin. Pivot to Peace has provided services to 126 survivors of gunshot or stabbing injuries since April 2016. We now also offer services for support of anyone living at high risk. Originally, we served only a 5 zip code area for ages 18 through 34. We now serve anyone living in Jefferson County without an age restriction. Referrals were originally from University of Louisville Hospital, but now we accept referrals from other medical entities, JCPS, public schools, parents, as well as we've had a couple of people to self-identify and come to us. I have a team of 10. I have 2 full-time caseworkers, 7 part-time caseworkers, and a part-time therapist. All are neighborhood-based and have experienced violence personally or with family members or friends. Most of my career has been working with the underserved population and being the voice for those who may not have a voice or anyone to advocate for them. I actually entered this work with Pivot to Peace with an invitation from the former executive director, Eileen Blanton, and the neighborhood trainer, community program specialist, Janine Shakur, contacted me and asked if I was interested. At the time, I was the administrator at 810 Barrett Neighborhood Place. Initially, I was a little hesitant in accepting the invitation to do the work. So I had conversations with friends and family members, and they each had the same response. And the response was, God is good. So I was obedient and accepted the offer. So that's how I came to do the work.
That's beautiful, Deborah. Thank you for sharing. And Interfaith Paths to Peace and Peace Education are kind of sister orgs, and just so appreciative of the work that y'all have been doing in our community. You're a real highlight and bright spot, and look forward to hearing more about a Pivot to Peace and how we can join you. Kimberly, thank you for being on, and if you would introduce yourself, that would be great. Thank you.
I'm Kimberly Moore, and I'm the executive director of Joshua Community Connectors. And I don't know how I ended up in this work, but I've always served. I've waited tables. I've done a lot of service stuff, and I'm in my 23rd year of sobriety. And I'm back working in Russell in an area that I did drugs in 25 years ago. So, I was at the mayor's. I'd been a director at a halfway house, landed at the mayor's office. Opportunity came up with a grant through the Keenan Foundation to get on the ground independently in the Russell neighborhood. My office is at 2120 West Chestnut. We serve 25 to 35-year-olds who have barriers. We address mental health, housing, and employment. We actually share some clients in common with a couple of these agencies. And we named it Joshua Community Connectors because we love connecting people and connecting resources. So, I love this work. I'm in my second year as an independent person on the ground. I have a business partner. I have 2 licensed therapists on our team, a part-time case manager, and an administrator who takes care of all the business side stuff that I really don't like. So in the process of scaling up and hiring another full-time case manager, we have, the Keenans asked me realistically how many people we could help per year because they wanted quality over quantity. And we said 15. And so, I had to reach my goal of 15 for this year by October the 21st. And I've already met it. And it's just February. So the need is great. And I look forward to partnering with a lot of agencies. Jesse and I just came back from South Bend, Indiana, being on the ground studying GVI with the people in South Bend. And I'm involved in GVI, so I look forward to that work and the work that I do. And I'm also a consultant at Goodwill on a project for young people. Thanks.
Thank you, Kimberly. You are a rock star and an inspiration to us all. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. And Christy, if you would unmute yourself, Christy Welch with Game Changers. Thanks for being on today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is really a blessing. This is my first time really even doing anything like this. So, I got my first start. Well, I'm a part of Christopher 2X Game Changers, and it is an organization that works towards targeting education and crushing violence since 2018. And most of you all know Christopher 2X himself, how much of a ball of light that he is. So it's just an honor to be able to work with him and learn from him. I really got my start this past summer when I was working for SummerWorks, and I was making a student-led documentary over, the violence and the racial divide that was happening, and just really understanding the perspective of the young people. Because during all of what's going on, whether it be racial issues, violence, I feel like the voice of the youth gets lost a lot of the times. And so being able to work with those students and not being much older than them, but old enough to where I understand their perspective, like still young enough to where I can relate, it really, really shook me to my core and really started to center what I wanted to do with my life and how I wanted to go about activism and really just trying to help the community. So at Game Changers, we're all about, pouring education, targeting violence, trying to get the students to understand and the children to relive and revamp that hope, because hope has been something that a lot of young people have started to lose. And it breaks my heart and it's very unfortunate, but every day we're working to help rebuild that. So thank you so much for having me on here, because I know it means a lot to me and those who are coming up under me.
Great. Thank you, Christy. Thanks for your energy and excitement for this work. Dr. Woods, if you would introduce yourself. Dr. Woods, you're kind of the Yoda of this work. I mean, you have been doing this probably longer than some of us have been alive. You may not need introduction, but please introduce yourself.
What an introduction. I would say probably since Genesis, but I wouldn't go much more than that. But my name is Eddie Woods. I'm the CEO of No More Red Dots Incorporated. And what we do is gun violence intervention. We started doing the work in 1995, working in the projects. At that time, we had 6 projects in Louisville, and we were working each one of those, trying to get individuals who were at conflict with each other to do something differently than shooting at each other every day. So the way we've evolved from me and Dwayne Campbell and Norman Martin walking the projects to a strategy now where we try to engage as often as possible the individuals who are directly involved in shootings, because we feel like that's about the only way that you're really going to impact gun violence, is you got to change the attitude and behavior of the individuals who are doing it. So we kind of lean into it that way. We get notifications on every shooting that happens in the city. Somewhere close to about 600 or 700 of them last year, and headed in that direction again this year. Once we get the notification, we do deployments of individuals who are either working in the area where the shooting happened or are assigned to that area. So in doing that deployment, what we're trying to do is to slow down retaliation. But in order to know or get a chance to do that, you got to have a good feel for the backstory. Every shooting that happens in our city, there's a backstory. There's a reason why. There's somebody wanted somebody else dead, and a lot of that is generational beef. It's stuff that goes over time. It's not just because of somebody bumped into somebody or stepped on somebody's shoes or stuff like that. We run into a lot of situations where an individual finally comes of age and decides to do something about a deceased loved one. We're also in the process now of developing significant partnerships. We have a partnership with the Department of Juvenile Justice where we're able to get individuals as they come out of custody, which is huge. We only want the individuals who have gun charges and those kinds of gun-related charges. So we try to get them involved in programs that normally we would have had to wait for referrals to open up, or and a lot of times our participants wouldn't deal with going to a referral. So we pretty much take them to the referrals at this point, and some of the referrals that we would have had to make, we don't have to, because we've developed programs that actually do what we're trying to do. Our website tells the whole story as it applies to now a lot better, and a lot, you can take your time reading it and so forth. We get referrals as well from parents. We've gotten a few actually from LMPD. You know, folks actually see where there might be some hope for an individual who is involved in criminal pursuits. So we get a chance to talk with some of those as well. But I am real thankful to be around, to be a part of this kind of a group. I mean, I know most of these folks, and we've been kicking it for a long time, doing what we do, you know. So and then I got involved with Moms Demand Action several months ago, and that's been That's been a real eye opener, because you got a lot of folks who have experienced the pain of losing a loved one. And while I get a chance to, and I don't know if it's a curse or a blessing, but I get a chance to actually be involved in that level of pain virtually every night. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Woods. And I put your website for those of you that are on Zoom in the chat box. In fact, I would encourage, if those of you that are on the panel want to put in your information with email address or put in a web page, for the rest of us that are on Zoom, that would be a great resource. So feel free to do that while we're doing our introductions. And to mention Moms Demand Action, Kathy Nikas is with us. Kathy, would you unmute yourself and join the conversation? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I got started with Moms Demand Action really back in 2012, 2013. I had noticed in the 90s that there was just this continuing erosion of gun safety laws, and I didn't know how to say anything, and it bothered me. But as time went on, I just got frustrated because I didn't know how to say anything. And then I found this group and I said, ha, these are my people. Now I know how to say something. Moms Demand Action is a group of grassroots volunteers. We're part of Everytown for Gun Safety, which is the umbrella organization. There's also the Everytown Survivor Network, and a lot of our work is trying to lift up survivors and to help them find their voice and to support them. Mayors Against Illegal Guns and Students Demand Action are the other two organizations in our group. We're an evidence-based organization. We take a look at data, which plays to my heart. I'm an engineer, so I love data, I love numbers. This is my happy place. And our goal is to end gun violence, whether it's city gun violence, homicides, or gun suicides, whatever the case. And so we're trying to work in partnership with people like Dr. Woods, with Deborah at Internet, and I'm sorry, I'm stumbling on my words here. But anyway, so that's about me in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, and thanks for the work that you all are doing. And Kim Tabler, would you introduce yourself? Thanks for being on today.
Wow, thank you. I feel I'm here to be a learner as well. So I want to be really clear about that. I'm excited. What a group. It's just inspiring already. So thank everybody for including me and letting me be part. My primary work is with 4C, which is Community Coordinated Childcare. 4C is just the hub of support and information for early childhood education providers. So what you would know is preschool, daycare, childcare folks. So I'm the professional development manager there, and so my department is tasked with the job of offering trainings and education to people who do early childhood education. In terms of the work around violence prevention, it's almost, it has to be connected. We can't not do early childhood education without addressing some of those things. And so 4C specifically offers child abuse prevention education, education around preventative factors, education for folks about reporting, and also education for teachers about appropriate behavior with behavior that is appropriate for children in developmental milestones. So that way, any red flags are more identifiable. We want to support teachers who see young kids who have been exposed to violence just by way of the fact that those kids are in their preschools and daycares. So through my position at 4C, I ended up on Community Shield, and Community Shield is another collaborative effort. About 40 organizations come together to do the work of kind of breaking the cycle of violence by addressing what happens to kids when they're exposed to violence. And so every organization that you can think of, the big names and the big players are part of Community Shield, and we have come together to, again, offer webinars, trainings, and support for people who care for children, so that trauma-informed care and violence awareness and prevention in that way is kind of also an automatic lens for how they work with kids. So I'm here to represent Community Shield by way of 4C. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Kim. And it was important to have a diversity of people on, because when we're talking about reducing violence, we're talking about all kinds of and types of violence. One of the things that was important in our conversation last week is to make sure we're not just talking about violence that is stereotypical violence, what we mean, but there's all kinds of ways. We have interpersonal violence, and then we have systemic violence, like redlining. Like there are these systemic issues that are violent towards people. So we're not just looking at interpersonal violence, although that's an important concern. We also want to look at the broader context of the ways in which we are violent towards each other. And again, the importance of changing the narrative. This is not a, hey, we need to fix West Louisville. This is not a, hey, we need to, fix Black young men. It's a way of saying that our whole culture, it needs to be engaged in changing violence, because there's systemic violence perpetuated by all races and all people on each other. And so we're trying to take an integrative perspective while also addressing some of the specific issues and needs. So I don't want to go in necessarily order, but the first question that I had was, share a story about a success story, or share a story that exemplifies the work that you do. So I just want to open that up to anybody on our panelists. If you have a story that really kind of highlights the work you do, what's working, please jump in and share your story. And anybody can jump in. Deborah?
Okay, well, share a story that I have many success stories, and when I tell this story, you're going to say, people may say, this is not a success story. But I'm going to share it anyway, because it exemplifies the work that we do. We had a young man to come to us at the end of 2018, and he was injured by gunshot. This young man also suffers from bipolar, manic depression, as well as being homeless. And his engagement with us, he requires very little, but we are his safe place. He won't take medicine. He doesn't want shelter. He likes living on the street, so it's complicated. And you just have to, if you work with homeless people, you understand sometimes their mindset. So I guess you're wondering why we continue to work with him. We continue to work with him because he has chosen us. He often comes to my office for rest, water, food, sometimes requesting me to contact his caseworker. But his continuous plight is living on the street, in jail for loitering or fighting. He gets locked up for loitering, or in the hospital if he has been injured. No matter where he ends up, he is always released back to the streets. Now he goes to these professional entities, but they don't try to help him. They just push him back onto the streets. So we are his shelter, his hospital. And so that's why we continue to work with him. Well, this summer, we thought we had a breakthrough because he was in jail. The jail contacted us. His caseworker said that he had agreed to be released to our Father's House, which is a community organization for substance abuse and other things. So we rejoiced, he and his caseworker. So he entered our Father's House. He did well for a while. He even tried to find employment, and because he felt like he wanted to pay for his stay there. Unfortunately, he left in October. But if you are aware of people with substance abuse, they enter treatment, but it may take 8 times before they actually understand and make that commitment to change. So I guess you're wondering why I shared this story. Really, because in this kind of work, success is different for everybody. You know, this story, I believe, gives you an overview of the complexity of our work, the institutional racism, and the need for understanding the trauma and challenges of our participants, as well as for equity in health and mental services, as well as in housing. You know, because you figure he's been in these multiple places, yet he's always pushed back onto the street. And so I can't release him. He can come back to us as often as he needs to, because like I said in the beginning, we are his shelter. We are his institution. We are his idea of hope. So yes, I do have participants whose lives have been changed by education and training, but I'm troubled in situations like this because for me, it's a societal blemish for which the average citizen is not aware of.
Thank you, Deborah. That's a great story to start with. How about some other stories? Just unmute yourself and share.
So I'll jump in. So for me, a success story is working directly hand in hand with a judge who was my public defender in 1994, and watching young men come into his courtroom and allowing me the extra grace to work with them versus sending them back to prison. To be able to go into the courtroom and advocate for people, and Dr. Woods has went to court with me, for me, to watch people say that no. So I asked somebody the other day, what do you want to do with your life? And they said nobody had never asked them that in their whole life, and they're 26. And so when I said, what do you want to do? He had all these dreams and all these goals. And it was exciting to hear. And so when I said, you can achieve that, he was like, you think so? You know, so when you get to, you know, sit in an office with somebody who has been homeless, and I think one of the greatest things we've been able to do is we were able to access Section 8 vouchers from the city, where young men and women with gun charges, violence on the record, they're able to have sustainable housing because the city believed in what we were doing. So to watch this kid get excited about possibly getting Section 8, possibly being able to work and being able to achieve his dreams. And so, you know, the first thing people have to do coming into our organizations, they have to address their mental health. And so when I can have a conversation with a young Black man to say, cause you go to therapy doesn't make you crazy, you know, and they become willing to go. When I say I have a therapist, I think everybody on this panel probably have a therapist or somebody that they talk to, but to let them know that they're not crazy and that it's really okay to access those services. So for me, to watch young people be able to dream when they came dreamless, you know, to watch them be able to have goals when they've never had goals and stuff before. And then for me to be able to collaborate with a lot of people that's on this call, you know, one of the things I like to share is if I can't give people the services, Dr. Woods probably can. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on, but to watch young people dream again, who when they came to you, they had no goals, they had no dreams, and they were very angry, to watch them go to therapy, soften up, and the therapist call me up and tell me how amazing they are and how smart and talented they are. That's what this work is all about for me.
Thanks, Kim. How about someone else, some other stories of
Let me try something, Judd.
Please, Dr. Woods.
It's kind of it's twofold. We do something called a Peace Basketball League when we're able to do it. And that's where we get people who have conflict with each other, may have been shooting at each other, to play on the same basketball team with each other. And these and the coaches are people from the community, faith community, service providers, law enforcement. These folks are the coaches, and they draft these young men to play. So and that's one part of it. But the other part of it, and how you kind of feel like this thing is working a little bit, is that we do something called the Junior Peace League, which is elementary school kids. So what happens is a lot of our adult participants bring their children back to play in the Junior Peace League. So you're getting a chance to teach peace at a whole nother level when it happens like that. And then I've been around long enough to have helped to raise some of the service providers and some of the folks who create the problems, who get a chance to change their lives around. And that's real cool for me. But one of the hidden things that we need to make sure our community understands, and this is part of the story, is that it's very difficult to gauge or measure things that don't happen. So it's very difficult to do that. So consequently, I guess I can very comfortably say that without the work of the people on this panel, and there's some folks who are not on the panel but in the room, we would probably have way worse numbers than we got. It's easy to say that. You know, we do on the average about 200 interventions, and over the last 3 years, we've done on average 200 interventions and mediations, you know, and most of those folks are still alive. I think we've only had one where it just didn't take for whatever reasons, you know, when a person is just leading a lifestyle that's got death written all over it, it's not a whole lot of mediations and interventions you can do. But you still have to give it a shot, give it a try. But I think for me, you know, the stories are ongoing, and when I see some of the people that I know, I really didn't even think they were going to be here. They're service providers now, and our formula is real simple. We try to change a participant into an ally, into a worker. So it kind of goes like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Woods. Have I think a couple of questions that are emerging that I think will, but we'd like to hear if there's some other stories out there of successes or that talk about the challenges that we're trying to address. Anybody else would like to share a story?
Our organization works with one of the aspects that we work with is to try to talk with legislators, and that's really what we're doing this week. We're having our advocacy week this week, and the Kentucky legislature is a difficult place to talk about gun violence prevention because that's not what they often hear when we speak, but I think that we have had a few successes, and one of the things that I believe is going to, some of the things that are underway right now, I think are going to be really good. There's a bill that's been filed by a Republican lawmaker, which makes it more likely to pass, that is would deal with people that are in crisis, and it's called Crisis Aversion and Rights Retention, and it would help. It will help save lives, and it can help quite a bit with people who are at risk for suicide, but it also helps with people who are at risk for hurting others. And, particularly mass shooters have often shown some sort of a sign that they were going to do that. And so this is something we've been trying to promote with people in the legislature for several years, and it looks like the bill's been filed, and I think it will. I don't think it'll go this year, but it's more like a 2 or 3 or 4 year process. But it's a very slow thing, but we have patience, and we will keep going.
Thank you, Kathy. How about a couple of other stories before we jump into some questions? And those of you that are on Zoom, feel free to put a question in the chat box, but in a moment, I'll also invite you to unmute yourself. If you want to ask a specific question, feel free to do that. Is there another story or an example of that exemplifies your work?
I have one. So again, over the summer, working with these young, you know, they were ages 14 to 20, the oldest being 20, and it was a group of 11 girls. So you already know how teenage girls go, right? But it was such an interesting experience because so many of the girls have, and I'll cry about it every time because it just touches my heart. You know, so many of the girls have experienced childhood trauma from abuse to, you know, attacks from racists, to, you know, experiences with gun violence, losing siblings, friends. And it's just amazing what having that small community of, even though it was only 11 of them who have experienced these things, to be able to come together and just start to have some type of sisterhood. And, you know, a lot of these experiences that they've had has caused them a lot of ostracization from their, you know, their peer group. And so many of them are just like, you know, they come in and they're all like, all shy and don't want to say anything. And then by the second week, it's just like, and it makes my heart so happy to see that. But, you know, it also comes with the challenges, because when you have extreme trauma like that in your early childhood, it comes with, you know, the mental issues that happens with that, whether that be, you know, depression or, you know, attitudes or just trust issues. And, you know, we're also trying to work towards expressing ourselves and rebuilding that hope. But it's like, as we went through the summer, you know, a couple students had friends that were killed by gun violence. So it's just like all that we were doing and trying to, you know, hack away with the whole summer, in just a moment like that just came avalanching back down. And it's very hopeless for me, you know, for me who has experience, who has the education to try to deal with these things. So it's just like trying to even understand what these young people go through. It's just amazing. But, you know, every day we work towards it, and still trying to keep in touch with them and trying to, you know, build them up. But at the same time, just recognizing it's an uphill battle, truly. But it's been the most rewarding thing. And seeing their faces now, and just their pride that they have in themselves now. And just to know that because of something I said or did had that lasting impact on them is worth more than gold.
Thanks, Christy. Good to know you're joining in on this this work. There may be some specific questions that participants have. If you want to unmute yourself and ask one of our panelists a specific question. There is one. Jesse, would you mind telling us about the group intervention program? This is a new program that's getting started, and you and Kimberly just came back from some training on that. Can you talk about that program and what it's designed to address, and also ways in which we as a community could be supportive?
Sure. So first, it's really not a program. It's a strategy. It's a way of changing the way we think about addressing violence. And again, this is specific to reducing violent incidents. This is not, you know, root cause work or all of the things that we also need to really be engaged in our community, but it's how do we get the number of violent incidents down? Because to Christy's point, you can't make a whole lot of progress with people and building them up if they're suffering trauma of losing someone, you know, right in the middle of that. And I just like to remind people, you know, when we are getting in the weeds about who's doing what or what, you know, I like to sort of stop and say 173 people died last year. So what choice do we have but to kind of find a way to work together? And so GVI's strategy is about creating a three-pronged equal approach that brings the community voices, and you know, Game Changers is a critical partner in this, in the families that have been working with Chris and the team at Game Changers, telling their stories, because sometimes, you know, that's what would help someone, is to know what the impact of what they're running in might have on someone else. So the community voice is saying, we got to stop this. This is why it hurt. I'm suffered because I lost my son, or I suffered because I was in the life. And you don't want to go down that really difficult path I went down. And then bring in the social services and the supports that we have. I mean, you know, connecting a gunshot victim to a case manager that's working with Miss Deborah's team to give them that more intensive support, or working with Kim's folks at Joshua Community Connectors to help find themselves some more stable housing. And then the law enforcement piece is a part of it. I mean, this group of individuals who are shooting in our community is relatively small in comparison to our population. They are known in the community. Neighbors know who the people are that they're afraid of in communities. Dr. Woods does these interventions, the streets talking about who's involved in what, and this particularly looks at the groups in which they're organized. So taking a really proactive approach that says, even as a police officer, I'm not here to lock you up right now. I want to keep you alive, safe, and out of prison. This activity that you're involved in is putting you on a path to death, to shooting someone, to go into prison, and what can we do to get you off that path? So it's really a framework and a strategy for our community to say, we haven't always done this right. Police haven't always done this right. Social services haven't always done it right. And we as a community certainly didn't do it right either when we treat people as bad people. They're not bad people. They're people who've had trauma, who've been victims of other things, and they're making choices that are causing harm to other people. So that's the framework, and really everyone on this call can be a partner in that work. You know, we're putting together the infrastructure and the structure of how to do the very specific outreach to those individuals we know are involved in this. And again, I want to emphasize the law enforcement is the last piece. This isn't blanketing neighborhoods and stopping every car. This is going directly to the people who are known to be shooting and saying, we got to stop. Your group needs to stop. There can't be any more retaliation. What do we need to do? And if you don't stop, we're watching and we will come to stop you. But we're coming to stop you, not everyone around you.
Thanks, Jesse. Again, if you're on the Zoom call, feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question that you'd like to ask one of our panelists or all of our panelists. We've got a really amazing group of people on the call today. A lot of you are doing this work in your own ways. Or panelists, if you all have a question for each other, feel free to ask. You all have the wisdom to ask the powerful questions, which are often more evocative than answers, right? I mean, the complexities we're dealing with don't have easy answers. Is there a question for any of our panelists from our Zoom members?
I have
Kim,
one.
oh, please go ahead. Thanks.
I was gonna say,
Chrissy.
kind of as, you know, as the obvious rookie on the panel, I would love to hear like advice that you all have, you know, from your experience to pour into me as I move forward in my experience. So, you know, I don't believe in making the same mistake twice. If there's a way to learn from each other and hear it from my elder, I would love to hear it. And I know there's so many people on here, because I sent this link to everybody I know. You know, there are some younger people on here as well who want to get involved and want to know what they can do from where we are now and not to feel as helpless and insecure as we do.
Well, as somebody who has been on the ground since 2002, I would challenge you to do the best that you can do and not take it personal. We get a lot of broken people and a lot of angry people, and a lot of times you're on the receiving end of that rage that doesn't have anything to do with you. And that was the hardest thing for me when people were in my office cussing, and I'm thinking they're cussing at me when they're really just cussing about the situation. For me just to say, for me, and I said this to the mayor the other day, I don't think it's a gang problem in Louisville. I think it's a pain problem. And I think if we eradicate the pain, you know, we can eradicate the gangs eventually. But when you're working with people, just give them the best that you have. And when you go home at night, just know that you did the best. And don't do what I do and leave your phone on all night and let people interfere with your family and stuff. And so I've been doing this work a long time. And I probably just started setting healthy boundaries about 3 or 4 years ago, because I get up in the middle of the night in my pajamas with my scarf on my head and go try to save somebody. I used to. So, you know, I'm almost 60, and I said this to my daughter the other day. I had COVID, and I was really sick, and I almost died. And when you almost die, you'll come out of that, and you'll sit down, and you'll think about what's really, really important. So, you know, going forward, I'm going to help the people that I can. I'm going to help the people that don't want my help. When they say they don't want your help, those are the ones that need it the most. So those are the people that I really pursue, the people that's the most angriest, the people that's the most unwilling, and eventually they'll come around. And when you watch people die and you have to go to funerals and talk to people's mothers and stuff. This work will change you. And, you know, this pandemic has changed me in the way I do business. You know, I got really, really sick, and I'm just kind of like, I still go to in-person meetings and socially distance somewhat, but you got to be accessible to people. You know, I can't say it's a pandemic, I'm not going to meet with anybody. People are getting killed. People are dying. You can't come to my office. You know, I still let people come to my office. We give masks, we socially distance, and just really do the best you can do. And young men will gravitate towards you because you're a woman, and we have more motherly instincts, and we're a little bit softer with their pain, I think, than some of the guys are. But just do the best you can do. I mean, you're in good hands. Russell Coleman, Christopher 2X. I mean, you got the dream team, so you can't be anything but successful.
Thanks, Kimberly. Some more wisdom out there. Great question.
Christy, I just want to say I'm so glad to have a young voice. And I just want you to know that we are here to support you. So please feel free to reach out to us anytime, because you bring new growth, new vision to the table. And so I celebrate your presence. At one point I worked for Girl Scouts of Kentuckiana, and I had a program in JCPS. Specifically, it was a life skills program for girls. And so I can understand when you talked about your experience this summer, because there are a lot of youth, especially girls, who don't have anybody to talk to. And when you build, it's very, very important to build relationships. And that's what they need. And I believe you are on the right path. And, you know, please feel free to reach out to me anytime, because I have experience working with girls, troubled girls, girls who think they're not in trouble, but they really are. And so, you know, I just want to say thank you for being here.
Thank you both so much for that advice. It really, I'm trying not to cry because I'm such a softie, but thank you so much.
Chris, let me offer another little piece. At some point, you're gonna learn or have to learn how to hear what's not being said, because a lot of times folks are not used to telling their stories, and you seem to be a person who folks would easily talk to, you know, that would have that edge about doing your work. The other thing is that a lot of times you're it. Nobody else is helping this person. Nobody else is paying attention. You're the one. So, and don't look around and expect a posse to be there, because most of the time we are the posse. The folks who are in this room, or whether they're on camera or not, and I'm seeing some names that I know understand what I'm saying. You're it. You know, there's not going to be any backup for this particular person. So, and I think what Kim and Deborah both are saying are things that you can take to the work, and you're going to learn. I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, most of what you're going to learn, you're going to have to do, and at times you're going to be like the rest of us. We thought about quitting, but then God said no. You know, so we kept doing what we do. But you're going to be fine. Holler at us if you need us.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I just want to piggyback what Eddie said. You have to have the courage to ask the difficult questions, but you have to ask those questions with love, not judgmentally, but with love, showing that you really care about them and that you really want to assist them. The relationship building, as Eddie and Kim both know, and everybody, is very important. But as Kim also said, you have to take time for yourself, because there's secondary trauma. And in order for you to be your best, you have to turn your phone off. You have to take a day off. You have to leave the office when you're overwhelmed, because you have to take care of yourself, because you're taking care of so many other people. So that's all I'm going to say. But, you know, like Eddie has said, Kim has said, call us, you know. even if you just need to come and say, look, don't say anything, I just need to release. You know, we feel you, we understand that, so take advantage of us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And I just wanted to say, like, you're young, and you know, if I could do it all over again, I would have took time, a little more time for myself. You have to have an understanding family and an understanding mate. And at times my family wasn't very understanding because they thought I was putting the street people before them. And it really wasn't that. Like Miss Deborah just talked about secondary trauma. You know, I have my own vicarious trauma. And the first time somebody asked me to work with a sex offender, I was like, no, you know, somebody's in prison for doing something to somebody in my family. And I had to revisit that conversation because those people have a right to enter back into society just like everybody else do. And I can't say I'll help everybody but this person. And so what I've learned is, you know, I can't help everybody. You know, somebody just sent me something this morning and it said, everybody's not your assignment. Take some time for you. So I'm driving to West Virginia tomorrow for a funeral, but I'm going to take a couple of days and just rest and really not be engaged. And it's hard not to be engaged, I'm telling you. It's real. And so, you know, when it comes to this work, you know, I'll say this and I'll be quiet. You know, I quit every other week. You know, I want to get fired every other, you know, when you get those cases that are hard, but, you know, the people on this call have been around forever and we've done this work together. And, you know, they've talked to me when I'm screaming and I'm angry, and they've talked to me when I'm crying because I'm sad. You just have to be surrounded by good people who look out for you no matter what.
Amen. Amen. This is awesome. This is just awesome. It really makes me very happy.
Judd, I was just going to add that I think is helpful for the whole work, right, is that I think when we talk about violence in our community right now, it's a huge problem, right? And it feels overwhelming for those of us who read the headlines or are involved in the work. And I think it's super easy to get discouraged or to think that you can't do something. But I know that the work we've seen in other states and other cities and in our own city is sometimes the effort that we have to put out is not that big, right? It's a small thing that somebody needs for support. And so we don't have to solve the whole world's problem. We don't have to be a community that everybody's getting along with police 100% right now. And we're all, you know, congratulating each other on all the great work. Like, it doesn't have to be all fixed and solved in order to make a difference for somebody else. And so I'm trying to, for my own self, remember that some of that small stuff that we think might not be consequential is extremely consequential to someone else. And we might not think it's enough, but it might just be enough for that moment. And so I think that's important in the work, because I think everybody has a place for that. Everybody has something they can contribute if it's just a small piece of it, you know, whether that's a small donation to Peace Education or No More Red Dots or Joshua Community Connectors, Game Changers. You got 20 extra bucks this month and you want to send it, that's significant for somebody. Or maybe it's a much bigger piece, but I think we all have a role to play, and I think we need to remember that.
Thanks, Jesse. I want to just echo that. One of the things that's been emerging in a lot of our conversations is we all have some responsibility in our own places where we live and move and have our being. Even just the way we talk to other people. There's a lot of violence that comes out over social media, just the way we speak to each other, or the posts that those are violent towards people. There are a lot of ways in which we inflict violence. And I think we can all ask ourselves, what is it that I can do in my own life, in my own sphere? And we can ask larger questions. I mean, those are both and types of questions that we need to be asking. So I do have a question. You know, if you were to give some practical ways, like what are some, what I would call fulcrum points. Fulcrum points are these places where we can put a little bit of energy and effort and it makes a big difference. If you can think about, maybe for you and your organization, what do you think are some fulcrum points, whether it be policy, whether it be what we give to, or how we engage? What are some of these fulcrum points that we can think about?
One of the things that tends to be an ongoing issue and or problem, I guess, is that the public doesn't quite understand that this is dirty work. This is very high impact work. When you're talking about gun violence intervention and you're talking about trying to do something about homicides and all of that, you're really talking about a segment of our population that this is lifestyle stuff for them. This is not something that you can run up and do a kumbaya moment, and everybody's going to just be okay because you grabbed them up and held on to them and all of that kind of stuff. When we grab a person, we're doing what we call a body check and trying to see if they're carrying a weapon, that kind of thing. See, and I think the other part is this. Some folks tend to think that if you got to look a certain way or be a certain race or a certain nationality to be able to do this work, and that's not anywhere close. What has to happen is you got to be willing to tell the truth. You got to be willing to look at a person and let them know that, perfect example, young man brings me his son, and his son is 3 years old. And he asked me, he said, Mr. Eddie, you think that I'm gonna be around to see this fella get to be a grown man? Because I really want that. But I know this cat done put in all kinds of work. He's got body bags everywhere. So I had to tell him, no, you're not gonna be around. And you're not gonna be around unless you change some of what you're doing, which that means you gotta start kind of cleaning up some stuff. And I know that to be a fact because I had to clean up a bunch of stuff. I had to apologize for some stuff that I know I didn't really do. But at the same time, I wasn't gonna have my mama's house shot up just because, when all I had to say was, I'm sorry. So I think the public don't understand that it's got a lot of pieces to it. It's got a lot of areas to it that are just not gonna be solved because you know what one problem is. And if we can all address the one problem, it's a multi-headed animal that actually, everybody can do something about if you just take the time to get with a person who might be involved in the mayhem. So just anybody who's getting into this work, understand that it's not a clean product. You're gonna get nasty. That's just how it works.
Kathy, could you share, if you were to recommend one kind of policy issue specifically related to gun violence that you all are working on that we could be supportive of?
Started talking before I took myself off mute.
That's good.
Sorry about that. One thing that sounds simple and it's got very broad support is to expand background checks to all gun sales. Now that doesn't fix everything, but in the 20 states that have done that, have implemented that, they have reduced the numbers of homicides and they've reduced the number of suicide and they've driven down the amount of gun trafficking. And so that's probably going to come up again at the federal level. And I'm not sure our state is ready to do that, but even though it is broadly supported, but that is just the simplest thing that we could do. It's 90% of the people in the country support it. It's not perfect, but that's just one policy thing. Of course, like Dr. Wood said, there's not a simple answer, and that's just one piece. It doesn't fix everything, but it would help.
Good, thank you. That's
and
what
then
I was looking for.
we have to be aware that we can't do everything, and I think we all need to just operate in our lane. Dr. Woods does some stuff that I don't do. I do some stuff that he don't do. If I need help with what I know he knows how to do, I call him up and just be unwilling to let young people suffer because people don't want to work together. If my agency can't give a young person what they need, I need to send them where they could get their needs met. And so I was looking at the question that said something that we can all do better is we can all work together and collaborate. I said this to the mayor the other day. I said, there's so much blood in the streets simply because people don't want to work together. If I can't give little Johnny what he wants and Miss Deborah or Dr. Woods or Christy can, I need to send him where he could get his needs met. I want to stay engaged with the process, but it's bigger than me. And so one of the things that I've learned is my service is not about me. It's about people. And so if I'm going to be an ambassador of peace and an ambassador of people, I need to be able to know what my limitations are. You know, Miss Deborah and I share a client, and, you know, we were giving out stuff at Christmas, and all these people were in my office getting gifts, and I was like, don't go sell these bikes, don't go sell these clothes. And people were offended. And I said, well, I'm just having a real conversation, because people get this stuff and people do go sell it. I'm not saying you're going to be one of the people to sell it, but, you know, I'm just saying it. And so another thing that I've had to work on is I have a client, I have a very strong personality. And so me and this client just kept bumping heads. Then finally one day she came in my office and she said, you remind me of my mother, and my mother was abusive. When you're talking to me, could you soften your tone? So I had to know when she came into my office, I had to soften my tone, because she relived a lot of trauma that she was working through. And so it's bigger than us. It's bigger than any agency in the city. If we want young people to stop dying in blood to get out of the streets, we all have to be willing to work together. That means resources. That means the big agencies that have the money need to help the small agencies that don't have any funding. You know, so those are the things that, you know, I think that we all could do better. You know, it's a lot of resources. It's a lot of money. People want to pick and choose who they help and what they give to. You know, and that's their right if it's their money. But don't say you're about the solution when you're helping an organization that you know is not doing the work.
I'm Jimmy Welch with Pivot to Peace. I would like to ask Kathy a question.
Please, go ahead.
On the subject of gun control, you said the states that haven't implemented it are doing a whole lot more violence reduction. Where are the other guns coming from? You know, it's as easy to buy a gun as it is to buy a pack of chewing gum. I know they're getting them out of unlocked cars and stuff, but everybody ain't not stealing the gun and selling it. But you know, guns are just easy to acquire. Where are they coming from?
Well, you're absolutely right. Some of the guns are coming from people who don't store them securely. And that's one of the education pieces that we try to work on with people, is to talk to them about the need to store your guns securely so that they don't end up getting stolen and then resold and turned into a crime gun. There's a woman who was on Nextdoor near my house, and she was complaining because she said her loaded gun got stolen from her, very well hidden loaded gun got stolen out of her car. And it turns out she had an unlocked car, and it was the third one that she had left in this unlocked car. And a lot of people, before I said anything, helped her to understand that she was part of the problem. You know, and that's one of the things that we need to communicate to people who don't understand how their carelessness and lack of care is actually contributing to the problem of gun violence in our city. I don't know if I answered your
Jimmy,
question.
I would just say that a lot of the guns, where I've talked to people without criminal records are purchasing guns, selling them, reporting them stolen. I know that for a fact. I've talked to people, you know, they're going to different places, buying guns because they can, then reporting them stolen, and then they're selling them on the street.
We have a great group of folks here. Any other questions or comments, or just join in the conversation? There's a lot of wisdom on here. You can't see this if you're on Facebook, but there's 23 participants, and I know some of you all are doing some work in this area. So others of you jump in with a comment or a question. Let's keep the conversation going.
I just wanted to say hi to my uncle. That's my Uncle Jimmy and his wife Charlene on here. So just hi. Love you guys.
This
Hi,
is
Christy.
Sheila. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Greeting. Thanks, Sheila. Go ahead.
I'm a volunteer in Moms with Kathy Mikas. And my question for people on the panel here, and especially people who are dealing with guns in West Louisville, is what are your thoughts about how the situation with, like you described, Kimberly, with the guns and what's happening and people selling them and all that? What do you all have any thoughts about any kind of legislation? You know, what is something that might help, you know, get more guns off the street?
I think if they did a
Dr.
better
Woods?
job, Dr.
Oh,
Woods.
no, go ahead, Kimberly, and then
Go
Dr.
ahead,
Woods.
Kim.
No, I was just saying, like, I don't know if they don't really trace how many guns you own. They should trace how many guns you own. If you bought 10 guns in a month's time and it's just you, that's a problem. You know, you can walk in anywhere and Dr. Woods will tell you and just purchase guns. So, you know, I think the legislature should do more due diligence in just how many guns can one individual purchase.
That makes sense in a given amount of time. Yeah.
Well, and then another thing about, well, it's two or three things about guns. First off, we got guns that can be purchased at a gun show just by purchasing it. You know, whoever's got the money can buy the gun. You know, we also have guns that turn up at on railroad tracks, whole caches of guns, and people find them, quote unquote, find guns laying in alleys, whole caches of guns laying. These guns are not being put in these places by accident. You know, these guns are being set up to be used. And then we got this whole situation around unregistered guns. Almost everybody who has a gun is unregistered, you know, especially a young one. If you got a kid with a gun, that's illegal all by itself. And they didn't get that gun by going anywhere and buying it, other than buying it from somebody who might be one of their peers or what have you. I think a bigger issue, a more functional issue would be that if we went ahead and registered bullets. You know, if you put a number on the box of bullets and put the same number on the shell itself, then you got a way to start an investigation when the time happens, when you got shell casings at a place. And then it makes it a little more difficult to buy bullets when you have to sign for them. And let me say this, and I'm not trying to put anybody on blast or anything like that, because that's not what we do. But there's a couple of spots in town right now where you can walk into their business and buy bullets. You can buy a bullet for $1. For $1, you or ever how many dollars you got, you can get that many bullets. It don't matter who you are or how old you are, as long as you can come in and if you don't have to sign for it, that can happen all day long. There's a lot of little things that we can do, or we can monitor certain kind of businesses. But the thing that Kim was talking about with regards to folks without records buying guns and reselling them, that's happening. That's real stuff. That's happening with very large weapons, in fact. We're not really talking about just 22s or 25 automatics or even handguns in some cases. We're talking about very large AR-15s and AK-47s and what have you. Any numbers you want to put on it.
Those are straw purchases, and they're actually not legal, but those are not, can be more difficult to follow.
Right.
Yeah.
Eddie, this is Sheila again. So what is the take on who's putting those guns out in the alleys and on the railroad tracks?
I don't know. It's you know, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist kind of person or anything like that, but I think some things kind of go without saying. You know, some folks got a vested interest in our young people having weapons, and they don't mind sticking them somewhere close to railroad tracks and those kind of things like that, or letting folks know in certain neighborhoods when there might be a shipment of guns that's coming through on certain box cars. So you bust the seal on all of the box cars until you get to the one that's got the weapons in it, you know. And then folks might come for me for saying that, but you know, we stay ready.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree with you, Eddie. I agree with you 100%.
Thanks, Ken. I appreciate you, partner.
So any other questions from our Zoom participants for our panelists? Just feel free to unmute yourself and jump in, or you can put it in the chat box and I can read it. I would love to engage you in the conversation. We have about 15 more minutes before we do a checkout. Any other questions for our panelists from Zoom participants?
I think one thing I can say, speaking towards like the conversation of guns, because, you know, I didn't even know that you can get guns off of railroads. I did not know that. So there's like a lack of education, one, in the younger generations, and then I guess it's like the people who know, who wants to know knows. So that's an issue. But I know for me, one thing like I try to like stress among my peers is a shift in this consciousness of what is popular culture. It sucks. It just sucks. It's nothing but death. Like just listening to these rappers, like how they talk about, you know, guns, drugs, the disrespect towards women. Like, I mean, at just some point, we have to just say, it's just not good. And it's just not good. And I just don't know. It makes me frustrated because I just get so frustrated going to the club and hearing like, you know, all the explicit like languages about women, all the references to guns. And it's like, I go over my grandmama's house and I see like my little cousin singing those songs. And so it's like, how else are we ever going to like stop the problem if we don't attack the actual source of the problem in my eyes, which is popular culture, social media, the influencers, you know, those people that people consider important, and then like trying to reframe what is important. Because if we understand it, like those people aren't anything but like, you know, doing the bidding of those higher powers that are invested in our community acting that way. So that's one thing I know I have tried to do, is just like really try to shift the consciousness of my generation, because it sucks.
Thank you, Christy. Somebody have a comment to that?
Yes, the guns at the railroad track is not an everyday occurrence. This is a strategic move that folks make, and is a very low move at that. You know, very quiet type of move. The other thing is that the only way we're going to really address the whole thing around guns and gun culture, particularly as it applies to low-income areas and like that, we got two different things we need to be cognizant of. One is the fact that there is no specific zip code for shootings. You know, shootings happen across zip codes. You might get a homicide that happens in 40212 committed by someone who's in 40222.
Yes.
And that's kind of a, you know, that's a misnomer. A lot of folks think that it's just a West End problem, so we don't have to really pay a whole lot of attention to it, and that's BS. You know, another thing is that until we start to work on the attitude and the behavior of the very young person that thinks that shooting a gun is cool, right, and that's the way to go, it's kind of a supply and demand type of thing. Right. Where you got to work with the young ones when you get windows that you can work with them to keep them from being available for assignments from people who are street influencers, people who, I mean, we've even gone to folks who are plugs of people who actually have some level of money and influence, and ask them to give us certain kids, to ask them to not take anyone under 18 years of age into your employ. You know, we've actually been able to do that, and that's because we got the network to do it. We know who the people are. They trust us. We're not bringing any kind of affidavits or nothing with us, so they'll listen to what we ask.
And I just want to
go ahead.
Eddie, you had kind of hinted to a Judd in the beginning. You know, let us not forget that violence is more than an injury with a weapon or bodily harm. Let us not forget the root causes. Violence has root causes in structural inequities, such as racism, oppression, poverty, and lastly, excessive policing. You know, and you know, if you look at America's family tree is filled with violence. And so a lot of this behavior, you know, we want to look at what's happening today and how many people were shot last year, you know, or how many people are shooting this year, but it has root causes, historical root causes, systemic racism, and we need to address white supremacy, and we need to address those areas as well. Proper education. You know, let me also say, so my recommendation is like, as you see There is more than enough work for everyone, you know. So I encourage everyone on this panel and your family members, check your heart, check your mindset, check how you look at people. You know, as you know, it's believed that all the violence is in the West End. That's why we expanded our zip code, because violence is in the community. It's in Jefferson County. You know, it's not just a West End problem. So if you want to work to eliminate white supremacy and racial inequity, you have to, everybody here first, do a personal evaluation of yourself, your beliefs, your values, and your morals, and identify the areas that hinder you from supporting the things that have been identified by the panel. And as well, lastly, I say be brave and speak up when you know something is wrong. Too often, we see things, we know things are not right, but we don't have the courage to call those things out. So that's my challenge for everybody here. Call those things out. Educate yourself. You know, be in some kind of committee with JCPS so that education is real, you know. So that those are things that we don't want to talk about, but all of those things are relative.
And then you have to really think about, we've had a lot of shootings just around the words that people have spoken. People have died just because they said some stuff. You know, not too long ago, there was a lot of shootings and they were all connected because somebody had said somebody was gay, blah, blah, blah. And people were dying behind that because somebody repeated it. You know, so we really, you know, words can be violent. Like Ms. Deborah said, we have to examine our hearts and stuff, and you have to make sure that your heart is in the right place when you're doing this work. And so one of the things I've got to do is I invited some people who probably would never come west of 9th Street to our office. And so as soon as they seen young Black kids sitting outside, everybody's like, oh. I was like, those are some of our participants, they're good kids. I shouldn't have to convince white people that Black kids are good kids and they don't even know them. You know, you would be surprised how many Black people, how many white people have not been west of 9th Street. You know, I had lunch yesterday with some people, and this guy said, I want to apologize because we haven't done our part, and we have the resources, and we've never took time out of our day to come west of 9th Street until property went for sale in Russell cheap. And I was like, what now? So let me visit this conversation. And they were talking about, they brought 20 properties in Russell. I said, what are you gonna do with them? He said, what do you think I should do with them? I said, I think you should rehab them and sell them back to Black people. He said, why? I said, if that's what you want to do, but you've never been west of 9th Street. And Judge, you know, it's a lot of people that we all know that have never been west of 9th Street. And so what do they think is in the West End? Just, it's good people down there. That's what I want to say on this call. But a lot of privileged white people don't think so. And then we have privileged Black people that have moved out and do not give back to the community either because they've forgotten where they come from. You know, I take a lot of flack because I just moved over to Indiana, but I spend more time in Russell than I do in my condo in Indiana. I'm there every day working with people. And so we really have to look, if you got friends who don't think that it's good in West Louisville, you need some new friends. You know, prior to the pandemic, I'll say this and be quiet. One of the things we were doing was meeting, Dr. Woods was doing East versus West. White privileged white people were coming to meet people in the West End, and they were doing East versus West, then the pandemic hit. But there's still some support around that when the doors open back up. Because these people need to know everybody in West Louisville is not robbing people, they're not selling dope, they're not selling their body. People are working and being productive. And what I want people to know is people in West Louisville, majority of them are doing the best they have with what they got. That area has been neglected for over 50 years. And now all of a sudden with the new gentrification, and I said this to the mayor, it caused a lot of murders because you move young boys in areas that were not safe for them to live, but that was the only place that their mom could get a house. And she moved, trying to move her family, and her son got killed just because of where he lived at. And so the powers that be and everybody who do this work have got to own their part in it. You know, so we have to talk about that.
Thank you. So we've got 3 minutes left, which means I want to do a checkout with our panelists. So panelists, you've got 30 seconds, no more than 30 seconds, to summarize what's been meaningful, insightful to you about this conversation. Yeah, 30 seconds to share what's been meaningful. We're going to go in opposite order. So I'm going to ask Kim to go first, and then Kathy, and then I'll make our way up. But Kim, can you check out in 30 seconds?
I can't, but I will. No.
That's you, Kim. The other, let's do Kim Tabler.
Okay.
I'll get to you in a second, Kimberly.
That's fine.
30 seconds is quick. There's a lot to check out. I think my takeaway is that it's up to us to do a little bit of creative problem solving and think of people and areas and fields that don't necessarily look like on the face of it would be part of this work, because everybody has a part. There's every single person in every single profession can have a part, right? And every single area geographically can have a part. And so maybe my charge for myself is to find the people who wouldn't necessarily think that they're part of the work and figure out what their part is with them. That's my takeaway.
Thanks, Kim. Kathy, how about you? 30 seconds.
Okay, well, I'm always short of words, so that I'm pretty good at 30 seconds. I am just amazed, honestly, at all the things that everyone is doing. And it's such a complicated issue, as Dr. Wood said. It's important to have this whole of community approach, I think. And I just feel like I've been enlightened quite a bit by hearing the details about what everyone is working on.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Dr. Woods and then Christy. Dr. Woods, can you do a checkout?
Okay, yes. I'm encouraged by the people on the participants list. I mean, because these are folks who I've gotten energy from for a long time. So I think we solve this problem, but we only solve it together. That's the only way it's going to happen. So anything else. So I would say this: stop hating and start rebuilding. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Woods. Christy and then Kimberly.
I think I'm just ready with all the information I've gained in this hour and a half. I'm just ready to do the footwork. And now having like a better perspective, a more holistic, broadened perspective of it, of having these seniors and these elders in this field just pour into me like this, it just makes me very much inspired and just ready to do it and get people involved, most importantly.
Beautiful. Thank you, Christy. Good to have you in the work. Kimberly?
I'm just excited about going forward. Very seldom am I on these calls and somebody as young as Christy's on these calls. So you rejuvenate my spirit and you make me excited about this work all over again. And I'm like Dr. Woods, we need to go forward and work together. One of the things that they said on a call from New York is social service gangsters, the people that try to stop other people from doing what they want to do, what they're doing, because they want all the work. We have to be willing to support each other. And one of the things the guy said is you get to decide who gets to stay at the table, but you need to decide who needs to leave the table in order to make it work.
Thanks, Kimberly. Deborah and then Jesse.
Well, I think I kind of summarized, but I'll just say, do your homework and speak up when you see something wrong. And don't always depend on what somebody else has told you, because that's how you get misinformation. Because even the news, sometimes it's always somebody else's opinion. But when you make an opinion or have an opinion, make sure you have the facts. Participate in education and not necessarily in a training, because education won't lie. And that's why I refer to the history, the violent history of that built America.
Thanks, Deborah. Jesse, check out.
Yeah, I just am encouraged by this group, and I think, a couple things, just remember that we're all human, and, people aren't born shooters. People aren't born folks who want to harm other people. And so we need to treat people like people. And I think we also need to look for the allies, right? Look for the people who are willing to work together, and this group is that group, right? You know, look for the people who want to get the work done. I've been really focused on a phrase I heard the other day: you can be a show horse or you can be a workhorse. And I know the people on this call are the workhorses. So I'd rather be a workhorse every day than a show horse. And that's what's going to get things done in this community. And I'm proud to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, to each of you, a deep bow. And from Interfaith Paths to Peace, I offer you words of prayer and grace. You are doing and being love and peace and grace and hard work in our community. So from all of us, we surround you and we bless you. We give you energy. We say thank you. We join you. And together as a beloved community, we can create a more peaceful community. I believe that. And I believe there's something happening in Louisville. We're asking right questions. People are coming together. We're ready to make a difference. And you all are leading that charge. So on behalf of all of us, we give you a deep thanks and appreciation for your work. And we want you to know you're not alone, that we're here with you, and we're going to join you in creating a more just, equitable, and peaceful community. For all of you that have joined us today, I give you thanks. And I do want to remind you about the Reckoning Forum. I'm going to put a link in that you can sign up for the Reckoning Forum. Again, that's Tuesday, March the 9th at 6 o'clock. And we're having 4 really amazing innovators and truth tellers that are doing some great work, and they need us as a community. They need us to come along and support the amazing work they're doing. So come ready to be inspired to that, and come ready to take action. So thank you all for joining us. And
can I just
yes.
say, like, Aubrey Williams is one of my caseworkers, and he's been with me since day one. And Savvy Shabazz is also a former caseworker. So I just want to say,
yeah, they're the real deal, doing amazing work. So so share that with everybody. We're trying to get at least 100 people to be on that Zoom call, and on the call you'll get to fill out a form that will say specifically how you are going to help. So share that form with other people. Deep bow to all of you. Peace. Thank you for being here today. You're welcome to unmute yourself and do our goodbyes. Thank you.
bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Welcome, Christy. Love you.
Thank you, Judd, for putting this together.
Sure. Thank you all.
Great conversation. Yes.
Judd, are we staying on or going out and coming back?